Welcome to the Queen's Lair, a lifestyle podcast. Get inspired by our latest tips and information about small business, entrepreneurship, natural hair, travel, food, and even relationships. Stay tuned for another great episode. I am your host, Renee Patrice. Welcome back to my podcast, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in once again. This is a little bit of a subdued episode. If you guys watch the news or have heard that DMX government name, Earl Simmons, has passed away at the age of 50, which within itself is already too young. But I wrote up a piece on my social media, and I didn't share it on all of my social media, but I wanted to, for the people who are not on the social media outlets, but you may listen to my podcast, I wanted to read this. And it all really stems from me thinking about all of this stuff that's been going on with DMX throughout the years. Definitely grew up listening to his music, the whole Rough Riders crew, all of them have seen them in concert. The whole thing just bothers me. And it always has, because I know just from people that I know that have been good friends with him for years, have always had great things to say about him and how he has such a good heart. And I definitely have seen the fruits of that with him giving back to community. That's always a major thing for him, a native New Yorker. So this is a major loss, not only to the Black community, to the music community, but also, all of us New Yorkers and like the tri-state area and all over the world really, but especially us New Yorkers, it was bothersome to me. And it made me think about how much we need to hone back in and take our youth under our wing, whether you're a parent, whether you're an auntie, an uncle, a godparent, whatever it is, we need to really guide our youth way better. And I say that because looking at DMX's life, there were so many people, adults in his life that failed him from the very beginning, and the entertainment business is brutal. It can have you questioning yourself, questioning the way you look, the way you talk, the way you walk. You're constantly having to be on all the time. It is a part of the business that I don't particularly care for. So I never really felt like I wanted to be an artist per se. I would rather be a creator behind the scenes. People always ask me about my music, and I never really felt the need to be an artist. At least in my younger years, because I always saw how they were treated by their own circles sometimes. I've seen some artists get food smacked out of their hands by their manager. I've seen that a couple of times. And it's like, what? Food smacked out of the hand? Yeah, because they need to keep a certain shape and they need to, need to be eating that. And literally smacking the food out of their hand. And I thought to myself, wow. When the label wants to make their money, they want to make their money. And they have invested thousands, millions into you. And you have to pay them back. And sometimes it's at the detriment of your physical health, your mental health, all of that. So I wrote a piece about DMX and just kind of giving a little chronological rundown and just my personal thoughts on the situation itself. So I'm going to read that. And also this also is a precursor to a video that I posted. So obviously you guys won't be able to see the video unless you Google it. But there's a video of him being interviewed where he is talking about how he was introduced to drugs. And that was kind of like part of the catalyst for me writing this piece. So I'm just going to read it the way that I wrote it and go from there. So I wrote, rest in peace, Earl Simmons. Addiction. It is not a game. To toy with it, especially with a person who is predisposed to trauma and dysfunction, is cruel. Here is a man that was emotionally, physically, and mentally abused by his own mother, including the many boyfriends she brought in and out of the home. He was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, which is also referred to as manic depression. The severe highs and lows, along with interruptions in sleep patterns, thoughts, physical energy, and just all-around mood behavior can be debilitating. DMX ended up getting kicked out of the 5th grade and moved from various children's homes and the street over the years until about 14 years old. He became a lover of hip-hop music as it was huge on the scene at the time. Enter his so-called mentor. X talks about this in the first video, but he also mentions this in his music. So watch it and really listen to what he says. Taking advantage of someone in a broken state is evil. There are no words or excuses for it. Yes, X made many mistakes and bad decisions, but this is precisely where the system failed him, as well as so many adults throughout his entire life. He was only 50 years old, just a few years older than me. It is heartbreaking to watch anyone being taken advantage of, especially the broken, hurting, and lost. Some people struggle to heal because y'all make fun of them, wanting to go to therapy so they don't go. You know that someone is cleaning up their act, but you offer them a drink. You know someone doesn't do the toxic things that they used to do, but you do nothing to further their growth. This is why people often have to change their circle when they decide to elevate. Sometimes it is the same so-called friends or even family that are keeping them down or even sick. I can definitely see that this was part of the issue with X. We as a people have to support the growth of others. It may not be your course of solving issues, but let people do what works for them. Don't downplay their positive path to healing. People who are hurting often find other toxic outlets and vices to cope because they don't want to feel odd for getting professional help. Especially in this entertainment business, it's like no one can be trusted at all. Why would you introduce weed to a 14-year-old, let alone it being laced with crack? This is a level of evil that cannot be defined, but God will deal with that. Vengeance is His. These are just my random thoughts on all of this. I know that nothing will get solved overnight, but we have to be our brother's keeper better. And here are some of the resources that I put at the end of this piece that I wrote. And I believe I shared it in another podcast, but it never hurts to share it again. It's www.talkspace.com, www.therapyforblackgirls.com, and www.therapyforblackmen.org. So that's talkspace.com, therapyforblackgirls.com, therapyforblackmen.org. I hope that you guys listening to this will search that video up, and I'm not quite sure who ran the interview, but you'll know it right away when you see it. He's wearing sunglasses and he's wearing a red and black hoodie, and he's in a square with two other interviewers, a woman and a man, and he is explaining to them how he was introduced to drugs. And essentially, I want you to watch the video because addiction is very evident in his mannerisms and all of that. But this is also a person who deals with serious, has dealt with serious bouts of depression. Bipolar disorder is nothing to mess around with at all. It often needs some sort of medication. It's very hard to watch. It actually is quite tough to watch. It's tough, and it's the video is not even that long, but it's very, very tough to watch because he is well aware and even says in the video that's where the monster began. He came to this person who was supposed to be his mentor, somebody he looked up to as a brother, and knew the background that he was coming from, but saw that he was talented and said, hey, and he says he put me on in the rap game. He did. But he also introduced me to the dark side as well. And that would actually probably explain the names of some of the albums and songs that X has had, talking about the dark side, and just how his name came about and, all of that. But if you can watch that video, it will explain a whole lot into this brother's struggle, with his life. And to have somebody taken away from us so pivotal in the music game at 50 years old, it just doesn't seem fair and right. Yes, it was always his decision whether he wanted to, indulge. But if people remember when crack came on the scene in the 80s, man, I remember, watching on TV where they would say, experts would say, even if you've never took a drink or used a drug in your life, you could be hooked from one smoke session. You know what I mean? Like, it was that powerful and it was that addictive. So when you're thinking about a 14-year-old kid who has been in the street, lived in the street literally, and went from home to home and institution after institution, and no one caring about his mental health, and no one, not only did they care, they probably didn't even recognize that he needed help. Then you get this thing that kind of takes you out of that pain for whatever time, and it must feel like euphoria, I would imagine. I've never used those type of drugs, but that's a horrible thing to expose a child to. And I can see absolutely that contributed to a lot of his struggles throughout the years. So again, find that video. He's wearing sunglasses in the video and has a red and black hoodie on, and he's talking to a man and a woman, kind of like a podcast sort of thing. But it's a very poignant interview and definitely does explain a lot. So again, rest in peace to DMX. We lost one of our great ones. Here we are again, But we need to support each other as a people. Don't clown folks when they say they got a therapist. Don't clown folks when they say they want to, lose 50 pounds. Go walk with them. You know what I'm saying? If you see that somebody is not quite themselves, if you get the thought process in your brain about somebody that you haven't heard from in a long time, give them a call. Give them a little text message like, hey, haven't heard from you in a while. This pandemic is definitely making people who were already on the edge even more pushed to the edge. And sadly, a lot of people have not been able to survive it. With suicide and people harming themselves and all sorts of things have definitely gone up. Mental health has definitely been in question. Even for the average, everyday, normal, happy-go-lucky person, it has been very hard. Very hard. So I don't take any of that stuff lightly. I'm very serious when it comes to stuff like that. I don't care if people think I'm being too militant about it. Listen, mental health it's just something I take very seriously. I don't joke around with it. I don't mess around. And I am sorry that X didn't have the right people around him to be able to not only recognize but encourage him to get the help that he needed. And sometimes it's a push. You can encourage people and you can suggest, but sometimes they need an actual push. I know it's easier said than done, but listen, I'm not immune to any of this. There's been addiction in my family, and trust me, it's ugly. It's ugly. So when you try to get that person to get the help that they need, it's tough. It really is tough, but it can happen. And I keep on saying it. Prayer does work. It works. Putting that good energy out there, keeping a great positive energy around the person. It could be the thing that you say to them in the morning. When people snap for something, you're like, why'd that person snap at me? You don't know what they're going through. You have no idea. Most people, you don't even see it on their person that they're going through something until they get to the point where it goes too far or no return. And if we can prevent that, then I think that that's an important thing to strive for. So again, rest in peace, DMX, Mr. Earl Simmons. You guys, man, this was a lot. This was definitely a lot. But if you want to speak more about it, as always, you can find me on social media at Onyx Queen Media. Bye, you guys.